two witnesses which have appeared as we took the break, Lucinda Hodges and Roger Chalmers, should come back to the table. And if you would then please describe the audio-visual which you would like to show for the record. Please describe the audio-visual for purposes of the record, and then you can show that.
Okay. I haven't personally seen the clips that were pulled. They were put together by graduate student Lisa Mosca, who's done a documentary on this issue called A Toxic Train Ran Through It, and she has pulled from interviews of the public officials who were not able to make it, so we can at least get some feel for their feelings on this issue. And I believe there will be some footage of the actual plane and accident. Can someone get the lights?
And firefighters evacuated about 400 people from around the nearby town of Alberton.
The EPA can, and you can check with the EPA.
Sorry. We want to interrupt the chatting in the middle of the road, so sorry. Just focus.
The cloud left 3 people in intensive care, and firefighters evacuated about 400 people from around the nearby town of Alberton.
The EPA can, and you can check with the EPA, and they can at some point take over a site, and they were working with us primarily and helping and guiding but respecting the local incident command team. Incident command was really dealing with the emergency. We still had tankers leaking chlorine. We raised, as the health department, the issue of are there other chemicals, and if there are, where are they? So they were dealing with that. They were dealing with all the other security issues and informing folks and so on and so forth. So in terms of long-term consequences, if we had information for people that we thought was solid, we would share it, make it available. We didn't have much of anything about long-term consequences. We were certainly involved in trying to prevent more exposure, which is why the evacuation was suspended as long as it was. But particularly at that, we were very much in an emergency.
And I'm not doubting that. I'm just curious.
Well,
I'm trying to get at who ultimately was responsible for dealing with the long.
So who's ultimately responsible for dealing with the long-term consequences? I think the courts will decide. I mean, I see MRL as a liable party for the spill initially. And what cannot be undone, whatever we're able to prevent in terms of other potential exposures, what can't be undone is the initial exposure. What we tried to do, and this was real difficult. I'm not a physician, and even if I were a physician, such as the doctors that spoke, it was very important to not try to diagnose from a podium. So we just sent people to doctors, and we had nurses listen to their complaints. We tried to categorize those complaints to look for trends. Really relied on individual one-on-one with a physician, because it's just not possible to do that in mass. So that's basically what we try to do is, form the questions for the study that we asked ATSGR to do. We did that through the types of complaints we received, solicited and unsolicited complaints, and we had the nurses there at every meeting to try to get those. And then their second function was to get them into appropriate positions. If they had skin rashes, irritation, if they had respiratory, to try to see that they were in fact getting some care and some continued care. It was time to move away from the emergency rooms and get people into some more continuous care situation. So if you're asking a legal question or just about who's ultimately responsible, the initial spill can't be undone. This is the air samples were never run. The work that Garen did, when he did that first sample for us,
Right, I know that.
it clogged up the equipment. We were going to do air samples, but he couldn't use his equipment, so we went ahead and commenced through the contractor and EPA the soil samples. I know that there's a lot of different opinions and there's a lot of different research on chemical sensitivities. And even when we were working with our technical team, and you can see that in the notes too, and we had the large phone conference with the folks down in Denver, medical toxicologists, EPA, local divisions, our environmental folks all together. Even with those experts, they felt that we could only look at chemical sensitivities, or what they call hypersensitivity, on an individual basis and at a highly specialized medical level. And that even then, that the literature sometimes conflicted. And so in terms of getting general guidance on that, we couldn't. We looked for, when we didn't know what the samples for the chlorinated compounds would look like, but we saw chlorinated compounds right in the sludge. We thought, well, they could deposit it elsewhere. In preparation for those results, which we didn't know were all going to be negative other than right there in that hot zone, we were working through EPA. I was working through EPA trying to get acceptable limits. I know there's a lot of arguments about what's acceptable limits, of course, but for sensitized populations, in case we did find some of the stuff in the environment and the residential areas, and there weren't for a lot of those. They didn't happen. They didn't happen. So we were, doubly glad when they came back negative. But we did go looking for that, thinking, well, if the physicians themselves, the medical toxicologists, can't give us any blanket information, we'll do some. Because for some compounds, there is information about sensitized populations. We were able to obtain it. Those are all valid questions. I think symptoms are very valid, but generating hypotheses from those symptoms, it's pretty hard to do, let alone prove. So I think it's just important that folks do follow up, and I was pleased to see that ATSDR does try to bring in folks that can look a little more closely.
But that gets hard to get patients too.
I think it's real hard for the patients, regardless of whether you're in a chlorine spill or not. If you have a symptom or a group of symptoms that for the life of you can't get diagnosed and fixed, I think it's absolutely maddening and a real burden. But I also understand that it depends what level of science you need in order to make a statement. And there's different levels of in epidemiology. There's a simple observation that something happened here, so we should look for problems. And then there's the real high test, using control studies and whatnot, that finally the population can be too small. And it's real frustrating. And we see that in other arenas of public health in a state with this size of population. It's real frustrating. So it doesn't mean the symptoms should be ignored, but it also doesn't mean it's not either or. We ignore them because we can't prove them scientifically, or that because they're there, they are proven scientifically. there's that area in there that's real frustrating for the patient and the provider to deal with. And I'm just hoping some referrals to some higher level specialists that deal more with chemicals can be helpful. At the end of the emergency, I talked with MRL about this, and statements were made at the public meeting and also face-to-face people that sought some guidance or reported a symptom. I told more than one person if they weren't comfortable going back in and they felt they were having reactions, or certainly if their doctor told them not to go back in, either for the PET feeding or immediately thereafter, that they didn't have to go back in, and that MRL said that they didn't have to, that if they were even afraid of going back in. I think where it became more of a question is for how long. Because at the time I was involved, when we were in the emergency phase and then going into the cleanup phase and couldn't sustain the emergency anymore, I have recollections of talking to people. I remember Dan Watts saying, if you don't want to go back in, you don't have to go back in. And I remember him saying, if your doctor says you have to go in, and I talked with him and others about that. So I think where it became a question was for how long. And I don't know that that question was ever resolved for some folks. There were folks that refused to go back in that had no symptoms. There was people that wanted to go back in. I mean, there were all sorts of opinions, all of which had some validity, either based on symptoms or their concerns about their home. But it was clear at the time of, ending the emergency phase that people didn't have to go back in. I don't, to my knowledge, this is only to my knowledge, and of course I was out of the loop after that, I really think the question became, when? When did that change, or when should that change for any individual? And it's very believable to me that it may not have been received, it wasn't emphasized. I don't think to all evacuees when all evacuees came to all the meetings. But it was stated.
What was stated?
Well, I recall Dan Watt saying if you don't want to go back, you don't have to go back. And if your doctor tells you not to go back, don't go back. I really think it became a question. And people said they didn't receive that message. I believe them, they didn't receive the message. But I really think it became a question as time passed. It was not a difficult thing to say then. I think it became on a case-by-case basis more difficult for whoever to figure it out. Should the person decide themselves? Should the doctor decide? Should MRL decide? Obviously, there was no one general way to deal with individual cases, particularly after the team disbanded.
Plum Creek Lumber Company relocated logging crews on May 9, 1996, after they complained that the smells emanating from the derailment site were affecting loggers in the area. Montana Department of Environmental Quality, Tom Ellerhoff wrote, "The DEQ supports Plum Creek's decision and believes temporary relocation would be in the best interest for all concerned." Dated May 9, 1996, less than 13 days after the spill victims were allowed home.
About sort of the same issue.
This was the work crew?
Right,
Yeah.
relocating logging crews, walking up the surface of the Alberton derailment site.
And when I was somewhere in the Great Stack, some correspondence regarding that, and when the crews indicated that they were having headaches, we said, our recommendation is get out of there. And I believe that they then conferred with the responsible party, and I think they came to some sort of arrangement. And I'm not exactly sure. Are you folks going to interview Railink too?
I'm just reading from your line. You said the DEQ supports Plum Creek's decision and believes the temporary relocation would be in the best interest for all concerned. I'm just wondering about the people who live right there. Was a temporary relocation thought to be advisable for them as well? And what was
probably it would have been based on how they felt, but I don't recall ever, what people may have left long ago. I simply don't know what. I think most of us that are in leadership positions regarding disaster are really under the opinion is that it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, which really heightens the fear. We don't want to go out and cause a degree of paranoia or panic to the community, but had that chlorine spill happened in the city of Missoula, we just simply would not have been able to deal with it without major resources like the entire National Guard. How can you, if that would have happened, in the railroad yard up here, we would have had to evacuate most likely everything north of the river and a couple miles east and west of the downtown area. So that would have taken hundreds and hundreds of people to accomplish that. And then you have to provide security to those homes afterwards. So again, it's a recognition that we've done a little bit of planning, but we're certainly not going to be able to do it on our own. Your timing is really pretty unique as the director of the Missoula County Health Department and I are going to meet with MRLs, the Montana Rail, this coming Wednesday. And while we've had some meetings with them, we want to just sit down where there's just like 3 or 4 of us and ask some real specific questions. From my perspective, it's not that I don't believe anybody, and so I'm not accusing anybody of falsifying records, but I'm not really confident that we know what's being transported through Missoula and then what quantities that's coming through. So right there, the statement is that we can do a whole bunch of planning, but if we had a better documentation or record of what's coming through, maybe we could be a little bit prepared. However many cars there were, 50 cars racing backwards to Missoula. And one thing that bothers me the most is a car can be designated as an empty car. It's been unloaded. It still contains as much as 10% residue. So you've got a 5,000-gallon car of some serious chemical. It could still have 500 gallons of this toxic stuff in it.
We're going to hear from a person from the community who wishes to read a statement from another person in the community who is, I understand, present but too ill to speak. So I would ask for that person to come forward now and state your name and address for the record. And after we have that done, since we are in the lunch hour, I'd like to break for 10 minutes so people have an opportunity to get a sandwich or something. We only have the court reporter available to continue the record until 5 o'clock today, so we're pretty much going to work through lunch. Okay. Please state your name, address for the record.
I'm Dixie Robertson, and I'm a citizen of Alberton, and I'm reading this letter from Jack and Lucy Martin. We had lived in our house on Wolf Street in Missoula for 21 years. It was located across the street from the railroad tracks. It wasn't fancy, but it was home and it was paid for. We had 5 children, and they all lived in the Missoula area except for one who lives in Alaska. We spent a lot of time together, and we missed them all very much. We did hear about the Alberton spill. The news media was saying Missoula people didn't have to be concerned. We always slept with our bedroom windows open and awoke one morning to a real bad odor. We thought someone had sprayed their trees or something, and we both started having headaches, and our eyes and noses and throats were burning, and we were coughing. We thought it was the flu. Jack's eyes began running green matter, and mine water. The smell didn't go away. I walked around the neighborhood trying to see what it was, no luck. Soon my skin looked and felt sunburned, but the sunburn didn't go away. My skin was stinging and burning, and I had a headache, my eyes, nose, throat burn. I was really sick, my stomach and dizzy. I was having problems with my balance. Jack's eyes kept getting worse to the point that he had to have a warm cloth to clean them so they would open. Jack is one of those people who doesn't like to go to the doctor. He had medical coverage, but I had medical coverage. He kept thinking we had the flu. It would go away. I thought he might have pink eye, so I called his doctor and got a prescription for him, but it didn't work. Jack's problems Jack's problems seemed to still be only nose, eyes, and throat, while I kept getting all kinds of sick. One day, a friend of ours from Alberton area stopped by my house to visit. She took one look at me and said, "You better see the doctor because you look like the Alberton people." I still didn't go. Soon after that, another person from the area told me the same thing. I looked like the Spill people, and she had heard that a Dr. Neumeister was seeing people for the eye problems. I called for an appointment and was told I needed permission from MRL and was given their number. I called and spoke with a man named John Barlow. He asked our name and address and told me to make an appointment. He did, and we went to see Dr. Neumeister. He told us we had been chemically exposed. We were given prescriptions for our eyes. In the meantime, I'm getting sicker all the time. I was having profuse sweating. My skin felt like it was burning. I finally went to my doctor, which was also okayed by MRL. My doctor said that I was having the same symptoms as the Alberton people. He started treating me for all of the symptoms. Then one morning I wake up and had soreness from my ear to my mouth and inside my ear. Within a few days, I had blisters all over the inside of my mouth, on my tongue, and down my throat. I couldn't eat and had to force myself to sip water because it was so painful. It finally got so bad that I was in bed for 3 weeks. I was being treated for all of my symptoms and feeling worse. My doctor prescribed lidocaine to numb my mouth so I could sip water. We found out eventually about the contaminated cars being moved to Missoula. The first place that they parked, people got together and had them moved because they were afraid for their families. So they were then moved down the track closer to my house. I continued to be sick. I just couldn't get well. But the news media kept saying Missoula residents needn't worry. We didn't know what was happening to us. My doctor finally said that I'd best leave the area. We still weren't sure of anything except I wasn't getting well. We decided to look for a place to relocate. It was after the freeway was reopened and we were going to Alberton. We both had our windows open a little. At the same time, we looked at each other and said, "That's the awful smell we had at our house." Anyway, we put our house up for sale and eventually sold it and relocated to Polson, so now we have house payments again. It's like something came along and swallowed up our life. We miss our family very much. I still remain sensitive to chlorine and other caustic substances. I have a filter for my drinking water, but not shower water. Right after the city adds chlorine to the water supply, my skin stings and I look sunburned all over again. I still have a rash. I feel sick at my stomach and dizzy. I hope that I would be less sensitive, but here it is, November of 2000, and it's not over. I was told that everyone's immune system is different, and that's why some people were affected differently. I had allergies before the exposure and was told I had mild asthma since the spill. I have not felt good. I have breathing problems and I'm still sensitive to cleaning products and don't feel good most of the time. Jack never did have anything but the eyes, nose, and throat problem. He had eye irritation and dry sockets, but is over that. He has diabetes and dizzy problems that prevent him from working. He also has low platelet count. The cause is unknown. He already had the dizziness before the spill. I do worry about the final outcome of this. MRL offered to pay my medicine bills if I would sign a medical release because I had no medical insurance. They did pay for some of my doctor calls, but eventually just stopped. I still remain sensitive to chlorine and other caustic substances. I finally gave up on buying the ointment for the rash unless it gets really bad. I still suffer from dizziness, balance problems, the rash, short-term memory, nausea, breathing problems. Anyways, this has all been pretty confusing to us and has changed our lives forever. I wish we had been told that there was even a remote chance we might be affected. At least we would have known to seek medical attention. I wonder if I had gotten away from there right away, would I have not gotten so sick? I don't think it was fair to not tell us.
Yeah, Ms. Robertson, can you state again the name of
This is from Lucy and Jack Martin.
and you have an address?
They lived on Wolf Street. They now live in Polson. And Lucy is here. Would you like for her to stand?
Please.
Lucy, can you please stand?
Thank you. All right, at this point, we're going to take...
I have two pictures that Jack and Lucy sent me that show the potassium crystallate car and the way it was brought back to the yard that I'd like to introduce as evidence as well to support her letter.
Okay, the photographs will be admitted along with the letter itself. Thank you. As an exhibit for the record. At this juncture, I'd like to take about a 15-minute break so people can gather a sandwich or maybe something else. Then we're going to reconvene. We'll be hearing from two additional panels this afternoon. One, a panel of citizens from the Alberton community, and two, a panel of advisors to the citizens who also testified about the derailment incident. We will then have, thirdly, individuals come forward during the public comment time to offer brief statements of 3 to 6 minutes. So let's take a 15-minute break. It is now 12:25. We convene in 15. Thank you. I hope everyone had food. And I'd like to call the next citizen panel to appear. The panel will consist of Ms. Beverly Ridenour, Ms. Dixie Robertson, Mr. Robert Sandstrom, Mr. Lee Schutter. And if there are others, would you please come up? John Zeimet will be an additional citizen who will appear on the panel. Please come up. We can get started. And I'd like to note before we get started with this panel that we do have a representative from the EPA Montana office, and he'll identify himself now and indicate the fate of our colleagues in Denver.
I'm John Wardell. I'm the director of the EPA office in Helena, and I guess I'll reinforce our folks are scheduled to fly out of Denver at 4 a.m. this morning on the charter jet. If you look at the Weather Channel, Denver International Airport in the Denver area is completely stopped. You may wonder why they're flying out on a charter jet, but there's a number of folks that were scheduled to come up. It's cheaper to rent a jet than to fly from Denver to Missoula and back and pay the airfare, hotel rooms, and the like. Give you a sense that this is not the easiest or cheapest place in the world to go to. But they were definitely scheduled to come, and I'm disappointed as well as they were not to do it.
Now, I'd also like to note before we start with the testimony from this panel that I had understood coming into the hearing that we were going to receive testimony from a Mr. Torgerson, senior engineer with Olympus Technical Services, Inc. Is he still here? Okay, he's not here. I was advised by counsel to Montana Rail Link that Mr. Torgerson will not now be available to testify this afternoon in connection with this hearing. He had indicated in a letter dated November 9th to me that he would be attending on behalf of Olympus and Montana Rail Link and offering testimony as he was the person directly involved in the incident, authored the incident report, and reading from his letter to me of November 9th, quite frankly, I have had more first-hand knowledge than any other individual involved in the incident, close quote. And I regret we did not now have his testimony this afternoon. That being noted, let's proceed with this panel. And who wants to go first? Okay. Please state your name for the record.
I am Dixie Robertson. I've lived in Alberton most of my life. My family's experience with the spill has been devastating financially and physically. I've had to leave my career in the trucking industry because of sensitivities to diesel that led to my development of asthma, which left me unable to work for 2 years. Also, buying groceries was just about impossible for me as I would go home sick. My children also have health problems. Antibiotics seem to be a constant now. We get over a course and we start over again. The children of Alberton are the reason that I've worked so hard to bring everyone here. I've witnessed ongoing health problems such as asthma, retention problems, sinus, migraine headaches in 4th grade kids, just to mention a few. Although it's supposed to be safe to raise my children on the property that my family has lived on for 4 generations, I'm still not sure. After digging for answers, I found that the testing for dioxin was not done. Is it safe for our children to attend a school that was never remediated? Is it safe for our children to play on a playground of chips that was never cleaned up? These are the answers that I feel that we all deserve to know. My own children were only 3 and 11 when this all happened. My son still today, the youngest, does not sleep in his bed most of the time because he hears trains go by. They need to be able to get help. As we cannot predict what is to come, the railroad's insurance company's only concern was to get people settled. And I feel that they told whatever they had to make that happen. The sad fact that as many... Oh, sorry. The sad fact is that many believe that if they were told untruths, that there would be recourse. I went out into the neighborhoods of Alberton and I asked people to come here today and tell their stories after hearing story after story of health problems ongoing. We were told that it was safe and there would be no ongoing health problems. I also heard of frustrations that these families have went through not being able to live the lifestyles that they once lived. Everyone tries to live as normal as possible, but it's hard to do when you're plagued with mounting medical bills. Chris Weiss at the EPA came to the hotel that my family was staying in and told us point blank it was safe for us to go home. We trusted these people only to find out that they did a half-assed job. This was a huge mixed chemical spill that somehow came out being labeled as a chlorine spill. Why weren't we important enough for state-of-the-art experts? Why have we been forgotten for 4.5 years? I would love to go on living a life without every day having to fight just to get help for the people that the railroad stated it would be with for the long haul. But if we still need answers to all these questions we asked when we were poisoned, I have tried hard to work with the EPA, being on the CAG with SATBR, and many other things, only to have questions unanswered and, frankly, being lied to. Now the time has come for the lies to end, and I hope the truths to come forward. I pray this for the children and the adults that I love very much.
Thank you for your statement, Ms. Robertson. I have a question. Were you present just after the derailment incident occurred in Alberton?
Yeah. We left our home at 4 in the morning and went the back road to Missoula. We couldn't go, we were lucky enough not to go down through Petty Creek. And we came in on South Side Road, which is a road that you normally would not choose to travel in that time of year. It was a pretty squirrely trip.
After the derailment incident, did you observe any white dust in the area?
Not in my home, I did not observe it. I was told about it from neighbors that were closer to the crossing at Petty Creek. I believe that Danny's told me about that powder being in their house. At my house, basically, it was the smells and them transporting the dirt past my house. We came back and left 3 times because my son would get sick every time we did go back in.
All right, thank you. Can we have the next presentation?
Yes, my name is Beverly Ridenour, and on April the 11th, 96, we received a call from our neighbor, Fran Manson, telling us that the train had derailed and that there was a chlorine spill, and they were evacuating the town of Alberton, and that if we would need to leave our home, that someone would come and knock on our door. Well, no one ever came. So my husband and I proceeded about our normal day. We thought we were in a safe area. I got up and started getting ready for work, and he went out to do the feeding of the livestock, filled the water troughs, fed the horses, fed the dogs. But when he went outside, you could smell the chlorine very strongly. He came back in the house and he called in and told his boss that he wouldn't be able to be in for work that day because someone had to stay home with our son in case something did happen that we would need to leave our home. We couldn't be left there unattended. So I left our home about 9 a.m. that morning and drove down out of our subdivision and right through the chlorine cloud the closer I got to the Petty Creek Bridge. Got on I-90 and headed to Frenchtown. Well, the closer I got to Frenchtown, the sicker I got. Had the radio on in the car and heard that they had taken the evacuated residents to the Frenchtown school. So I got off at the freeway at the Frenchtown exit and went to the Frenchtown High School. And as I was getting out of my car in the parking lot, I almost collapsed. I was very dizzy and sick. And a volunteer fireman caught me and put me in an ambulance. And an EMT was proceeding to take my blood pressure, and they asked me, "Where are you from?" And I told them that I was on the Ponderosa subdivision in Alberton, headed to work. And he said, "Well, that's total evacuation." Well, my blood pressure shot up, and the EMT thanked him very much for letting me know that that was total evacuation. I told him, but my husband and son are still there, and I, at that point, got very upset and a little panicked that they were still in a total evacuation zone. We got out of the ambulance together, and he took me inside, and I called my husband. He spoke to my husband and told him to stay put indoors, that they would be sending an escort to get them out. It was probably an hour and a half later, and nobody showed up. And at that point, the smell was getting bad in the house, so my husband took our son, and they got in the pickup, and they left. By the time he got to the Frenchtown school, he was so sick, my husband, he had to have oxygen. He couldn't breathe. So we ended up waiting there at the Frenchtown school until we were told what to do. We assumed at that point we were probably going back home. Well, we didn't. We were told we had to get a motel room, MRL would take care of it. In the meantime, all of our animals were left at home. 9 head of horses and 2 dogs. We got to the motel, and at that point we realized, gee, we don't have anything but the clothes on our back. We had to go shopping for everything. And then as time went on, we continued to work, and my husband and I continued to have some shortness of breath issues, and they told us at these meetings, if that happened, to go to St. Pat's emergency room. So we did. We went there, and they told us, they didn't do any breathing tests on us. Nothing. Gave us a prescription, both of us, for an antibiotic and doxycycline, and told us if it didn't get better to come back. Yet we sat at that Frenchtown school. They didn't have us get out of those clothes, didn't have us shower, didn't have us do anything. But yet when you read their daily logs, and their workers, when they were exposed down at the site to chlorine, they had them immediately get out of those clothes and get shuttered and sent them off for treatment and care. We sat there all day. Why? And then also when you read their logs, an EMT by the name of Deb Price instructed the workers down at the site not to take any aspirin or aspirin derivatives due to the fact that they react with chlorine. We were never told that. Well, she also told them in her little excerpt that it was okay for them to take Tylenol and ibuprofen. Well, ibuprofen is related to the aspirin family. So she should have known this. Why was that okay? Is there some reason why that, ibuprofen won't react with the chlorine? Nothing is stated
I need to
there.
ask you a question. Whose daily logs are you speaking of?
This came out of the DREAM team, which was the incident command people, and Deb Price's EMS, and I quote, "Do not take any aspirin or any medications with aspirin derivative. Tylenol or ibuprofen is all right. Aspirin reacts with chlorine."
You spoke earlier of workers on the derailment site being told to shower after exposure to chlorine, and that you read that in the daily logs. So you personally read that in the daily logs?
I have, and I'll be happy to copy that and make sure it's submitted to record for you, Bob.
Thank you. That's all.
So I have another excerpt here. The protective clothing that has been exposed will be researched as to damage. Those I will submit to you. I don't know, maybe you can answer that question for me. Let me ask an issue. We did not go back to our home until Saturday when we went back in for pet rescue, to rescue our animals. MRL at that point, they told us it was safe for us to go back in for this. A lot of people became very ill during this pet rescue. People who had not initially ever been exposed. One of those people was my neighbor, Terry Stewart, and unfortunately she was not here today. We were allowed to re-enter into that area where my home is on Meadow Lane for 15 minutes to retrieve the 9 head of horses and the 2 dogs. Mick Colleen went with my husband in our pickup as we went in to retrieve that livestock. My husband and I honestly thought, and it's in the Missoulian from that day, that we would find those animals dead. That's what my husband told Mr. Moline. They were standing at the fence. We were very fortunate, looking at us as if to say, where have y'all been? We're hungry. We hurriedly loaded up those animals, and I hurriedly went through the house and gathered additional belongings that I thought we would need while we were out of our home. We left that area and took our livestock to the fairgrounds where our vet was standing by to examine the animals. He looked them all over, and he ended up, on one of our horses, found that she had kennel cough, which she did recover. We do have a bay horse who has a weight problem that he's developed since the spill. I have pictures here that were taken in '97. They're dated 9/19. The horse was with my husband. He went into the hills to do some trail maintenance for the Forest Service, and they were up there for a few days, and these horses left. He was very fat at the time, very healthy. He came back, and he had lost 200 pounds in 4 days. And when they work in the hills, they eat better than they do when they're at home because they're working. And he's riding back, and he's skin and bones, and I have pictures to submit for the record. My vet, Dr. Henry Finelli, has done extensive tests on the animal trying to determine what has caused this, and he's been unable to determine what the cause is. He does not know if it's from his exposure to the chemicals or from something else. He doesn't know at this point. During our evacuation period, my husband and I both had to seek the medical attention, as I told you, from St. Pat's. We are now currently being treated, all of us, myself, my husband, and my son, by Dr. Sinclair at the Allergy and Asthma Center. We all have breathing problems. And as you can see from my medication bag here, everything in here, my Ceravent, my Flow Vent is all for my asthma. I take Accolate as an additional breathing tablet. I have Zyrtec, the Cinerex. I have an albuterol inhaler for rescue when I have back. I have Refresh Plus for my dry eye syndrome that Dr. Neumeister has diagnosed me with, plus Refresh PM ointment for at nighttime. And another bottle of medication Dr. Marks has given me because of the depression that has set in since our major problems that have all developed. My son has to take Axid as he needs that for a reflux problem he's developed since the spill. He also has a Ridenour nasal that he uses. I have a Flonase, and he also has an albuterol that he has to use prior to being able to go even to play football practice, and during the game itself he has to sometimes use his inhaler. The only medication in this bag that was here prior to the spill is my Topamax, because I was an epileptic prior to the spill, and that's to control my seizure disorder. But prior to the spill, everything in this bag, this is the only thing that wasn't there. Everything else I need since. This is worse than what my grandmother had when she was 97 years old when she died. Pretty bad when you're 34 years old. During the public meetings, a lot of people had a lot of questions with regards to testing that was being done out there. The big issue seemed to be the chlorine, always the chlorine. That's all they talked about. The chlorine spill, like Ms. Robertson said, it was dubbed a chlorine spill. And then finally the issue did come to light that the cressolate did mix with the chlorine. And I think my big thing here is, the testing that Aaron Smith did. And he came back and recommended to them that they test for dioxins because he found the dioxin precursors, and he told them to start with the cressolate car. He said, check the cressolate car, go to the stained soil from there if you find something, and then proceed from there to see how far it may have migrated off-site. Why didn't they do it? Hopefully you can find that out for me. Their reasoning, and in a lot of things I've read, seems to be that they never was any temperatures hot enough to form dioxins. Why would you have to have a temperature hot enough if the dioxin was already in the cressolate car, if it was already there? Had a lot of my neighbors and good friends die since the spill. Naomi James is one of them. My mom and dad don't live here. They're 2,000 miles away. And Naomi became my surrogate mother. The day she called and told me she had cancer and was dying, that was a very hard day for me. And then the day her husband called and told me that evening that she had died in her sleep the night before, that was really hard because I was making her dinner. And the night before, I had a last meal with her that my husband had prepared for her. And it's been a very hard ordeal. I don't know what caused her cancer. Maybe she smoked, maybe she drank too much. I don't know if the woman ever drank, but I know she did prior to this smoke, but she quit. Ron Stone died. Just lived up the street. My son is a good friend of his son, and he's left behind 2 children now, and a wife to deal with everything. He wasn't that old. My neighbor next door has had breast cancer. She went in for a test, and they told her it was a calcification. Had she not been a nurse and demanded a biopsy, where would she be today? I'm not crying cancer because of the spill, but my big question is, dioxins are cancer-causing agents. And why, when MRL was told to test for them, and it's in their daily logs, and I will copy that out and make sure you get it for the record, because they've even got the chemical symbols there for dioxins. They knew it, and they didn't test for it. And all I want to know is why. What's going to happen to these children 10, 15 years down the road? Are they going to walk into a doctor one day and be told, gee, I'm sorry, but you've got a brain tumor? A man at Petty Creek that my husband used to work with died from a brain tumor. What was the cause? I don't know. But these are a lot of issues that have been raised and they need to be addressed. And all they based it on was there wasn't any temperatures there to form the dioxins. I've also read in the logs that a Mineral County sanitarian found 16 dead suckers downstream on the bank from the derailment. Those fish were turned over to the Fish and Game for testing. What are the results? The reason given in the logs for the dead fish was that they were probably due to a mineral release in the river. Well, if there was such a mineral release, then why aren't we finding dead fish all the time? One of the last meetings in Missoula prior to our return home, they told us about throwing open packages of food away in our homes, in our pantries. And I had asked them about the hay in our open barn, and that if it should be thrown away, and I was told, oh no, you don't have to throw the food away, that's fine. You know, they're telling me to throw away an open box of Bisquick or pancake mix if it was open in my house that had been sealed up, windows shut, doors closed. My barn's open and they're telling me it's okay to feed that hay. Those people didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have any idea what they were telling me. But if they didn't know, then why didn't they go to someone who did know and get the question answered? Now, upon my family's return home, after almost 3 weeks of being out of our home, you know, we were feeling pretty glad to be back, or so we thought. I went out into our garden area and found that the rhubarb was dead. And to this day, it's never came back. Our family collie was rolling in the front yard, and a day later we noticed that the hair on her back was missing. She had a severe burn of some sort, so we took her to the vet down at Dan Care Clinic here in Missoula. She told us that it was an acid burn. The only place that the dog had been was in the yard rolling in the grass. And I pulled a shirt out of my closet. It was brand new. It was a gift from my mother that she had mailed me from back east. I went to put it on and it ripped. I still have that shirt. Bob, if you need it for evidence, I'll be happy to make sure you get it. I did find the white dust in my library upstairs. I didn't think a whole lot about it at the time, so I cleaned it up and threw it out. And something that I think I need to mention, and when Mr. Chalmers had spoke about the doctors at the meetings, the physicians that were there were people like Dr. Beckemeyer and some other people. But in reading things, Dr. Beckemeyer has treated the people of Alberton for their injuries. He is, you know, I guess an asthma doctor. But prior to us, he only treated one other chemically injured person. And I can submit that to you as well, to make sure you have that on record. It's also noted here in their records, too, that the State Department of Environmental Quality is not at the incident. Jim Carlson had mentioned yesterday that they would be contacted on Monday. The derailment happened on Thursday. Why weren't they contacted immediately? The DEQ should have been involved. Where's Mr. Ellerhoff today? Well, gee, he's out of the country, and he didn't even see fit to send a representative. Yeah, that's my tax dollars at work. Carlson from the Health Department. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. There are complaints of a pesticide odor. Possibly a caustic solution reacted with the potassium chrysolate or caustic reacting with chlorine. It is possible, but there are no answers at this time. We may be looking at the wrong thing. We just need to know. Ellen Leahy, we're checking to see if St. Pat's ran a certain marker test on the people treated for exposure. We've contacted Chris Sigler at St. Pat's. You don't ever find a response as to what these results are, though. Silverman, Snodgrass and Trudell are both a problem. What kind of a problem? A problem because Mr. Snodgrass came and was filming some things for us, and Mr. Trudell was smart enough to ask questions that needed to be answered due to dioxins, etc. Well, I see that Mr. Snodgrass and Mr. Twaddell took time out of their day to show up today. Maybe they need to testify today as well. The health department has requested an infrared photo for the computer modeling of the area. Incident commander has put this request on hold. Was it ever done? And if so, where is it? Why don't we have a copy of it? Gruel, one technical specialist arrived with a cold and the flu. He felt the conditions at the site were making him worse. He left. I've got a sore throat today, as you folks can hear. I've had it for 2 weeks. The average person would have had it gone by now. It's viral. I've been to the doctor. They just hang on and hang on and hang on. Lazy. Some of the initial responders have experienced bad colds and bronchial problems. But to hear MRL talk, there's nothing wrong out there. It's all in my head. I'm just a hysterical housewife. Carlson. We can look at the trees. If the infrared photo shows the path, we do need to order. My trees were in perfect health prior to the spill, but now they're full of beetles. They've been so stressed, evidently, that the beetles have just set in. But finding the right person that knows anything about it has been a big problem here. Maybe you can direct me to someone. The numerical values from the data will determine if it is safe for human health to return to Alberton. Or if unable to obtain numerical values, it will be by consensus of this group. Now, who was the group? Was that the incident command? If I heard Mr. Waldron correctly this morning, I don't think they were qualified to make the decision for us to return home. So where are these numerical values? There are listed symptoms when exposed to potassium cressolate, headache, and dizziness. I think we heard from the lady from Polson in her letter that she experienced this just by being exposed to the soil that had been excavated sitting in Missoula. Waldron, do you know what the white dust is? Lady, initial testing suggests lime. I know from reading the documents myself, and I'll copy the whole book if I have to, that they did dump lime on it, and then soda ash. I've got a copy here for you too as well to confirm what Mr. Chalmers told you. The EPA then mobilized URS operating system, Superfund Technical Assessment and Response Team, personnel in the U.S. Coast Guard Pacific Strike Team, an EPA toxicologist and a single OSC mobilized to the site on April 14, 1996 to replace the original 2 OSCs. EPA, USCG, and START personnel were allowed into the exclusion zone but denied access to the hot zone until April 14, 1996. Now, how do you keep the federal government out of that hot zone when they should have been the ones to have had access in there, bringing their strike team in and taking care of this entire situation? Mr. Waldron at one point here even says, had this happened 50 miles north, the EPA would have brought in their own strike team to handle the situation. Here it is. Yes, Waldron, EPA has the authority. If this would have happened 50 miles further north, EPA would have brought in their own strike team to handle the incident. EPA and Health Department have split their sampling. The results will come out the same in the end. What it doesn't say is, who said that? Was that Mr. Waldron or who? Well, how do they know ahead of time if those samples are going to come out the same unless they're sending them to the same place? Mr. Way makes this comment, cannot just remove the soil from the site. The soil has to be tested to determine the level of hazards. The decision would then be made as to the disposal. Well, that's fine, but why did some of it, why is it still sitting out here at the BFI landfill? Those workers are out there every day. What are they being exposed to? And someone here says, I will stake my career on it, that this soil poses no health threat to Alberton. Well, what about the sick people sitting in this room today? Myself, Miss Bookout, and look at the people sitting at this table right here. Mr. Sandstrom made the evacuation route out of my subdivision with no protective equipment, and look at him today. Ms. Leahy talks about there was a 2-hour meeting Sunday morning. The decision was made to contain the odor and move some of the soil out. Get the bulk out. The toxicologists feel there are true symptoms from the odor, nausea and headache. This is still ongoing today. So what is still down there? Chris Weiss, in a phone call to me, told me, we have removed all the contaminated soil. And I told him, I said, no, Chris, you stand corrected. You have removed it to EPA standards. You didn't remove it all because we're still smelling it every spring. The smell comes back. Mr. Waldron states that the public was left with the impression the soil was to be removed from the site. We need to manage what's been said. Yeah, they removed it from the hot zone, but they left it in the car sitting down there on the tracks because like when Ms. Robertson was home, it went by her home with tarps billowing in the wind, and her son was extremely ill from it, as she states in Lisa's movie, A Toxic Train Ran Through It. Leahy, all the clinicians and toxicologists said the symptoms are real. But yet, finding a doctor in Missoula to help you is like impossible. Way, I totally disagree that this compound migrated from the spill site. If he didn't do the test, then how can he sit there and say that? Where's his proof that it didn't migrate? If he brings me the proof, then I will thank him very much, personally. But until he does, I will sit here and I will call him a liar for making that statement until he hands me the proof. And then Mr. Carlson is the one who talks about the fish that I've already told you about. And Leahy tells us that Energy Lab and Billings are conducting tests and that EPA has split the tests and are doing testing on their own. I would like these results from Energy Lab and Billings as well. Safety from Nunnally. There are some initial responders with symptoms from the chlorine exposure. Check with the medical personnel or rotate your personnel out. Well, if they're getting and having problems and they were wearing protective equipment, then what's going on? Leahy, she found that there was a livestock issue. Weiss said that Dr. Prime feels that there are elevated lab results in some animals related to the chlorine. This could translate into a people concern. Dr. Lunan said in severely injured people there's been no elevated results. Dr. Prime tested for low oxygen, high blood acid, which causes muscle damage. This is a transient problem and will go away. It was found by Dr. Prime that the animal had been led by a rope behind a vehicle through the chlorine cloud. When the animal has been running, there's a reaction. But nobody can tell us exactly what's wrong with these animals. Dr. Lunan will state to this day that there's nothing wrong with anybody. Who makes him the expert, though? Has he dealt with chemical injury? And I want to submit for record as well. It's a letter to Senator Stang, when he was a senator, from Tom Ellerhoff, regarding issues from Jack Hunt at Missoula Electric Co-op. Jack Hunt called and reported to Mr. Ellerhoff in mid-September that he had 2 persons in his company reading meters in the area. Both reported having headaches at the end of the day, and one said she smelled something like fertilizer. This individual was reading meters at homes from the south side of the National Pier Bridge. West, another person was working from the mouth of Petty Creek. The day was reportedly warm and dry with some blowing dust. So I want that reported and on the record as well as to what happened there. We were in our homes at that time and told it was safe. Thank you.
I can go back to your earlier testimony. Is it your testimony that affected members of the community were treated differently than workers on the derailment site just after the incident?
Yes.
And how so, again?
We sat at that Frenchtown school, were never told to get out of our clothes to shower. But yet when workers were exposed, if they had a leak of chlorine, they were immediately sent out. They were told to shower, get out of those clothes, and I will make sure you get a copy of that information.
So is it your testimony that community members who were affected were treated less protectively?
Yes. If we were left to sit in those clothes, yes. And we were. We we were left in.
Is it also your testimony that neither the federal EPA nor the state DEQ were in the hot zone, as it's been designated, just after the derailment incident?
Yes,
And your testimony is based on the START report again?
yes,
And your understanding, based upon discussions with people who were involved after the derailment incident?
that is correct.
Did you personally observe any of the white dust which has been spoken of earlier in the testimony by other members in the community?
No, other than what was in my home.
You observed white dust in your home?
In my home, in my library,
Okay.
in the upstairs of my home.
Can you tell me what that looked like, other than being white?
I mean, it's just, I don't know how else to explain it other than just a white dust, kind of a powdery, I mean, almost like a, it's not really an ash, but it was just, it was different. It wasn't an ash, it was a very fine, white, powdery dust. I don't know how else to explain it to you.
Do you believe, having personally encountered this white dust in your home, in your library in particular, that it would have been impossible to have collected any of it for sampling purposes?
It would have been impossible to collect it for
Do you
sampling?
believe it would have been impossible to collect it for sampling purposes?
No, they probably could have. I just didn't think about it at the time. I was cleaning the house, I cleaned it up and tossed it out.
Well, obviously,
You know?
obviously, if you had seen the white dust in your home and in your library and had then cleaned it up, it was possible to remove it from the surface.
Yes. Yes, it was.
You think if you had tried, you could have removed it and put it in a jar?
Probably with a baggie or something, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Bill, I'm Robert Sandstrom. I'm going to just kind of wing this for you. I've got a checklist here of symptoms they asked if you had any, came in and had these symptoms.
Sir, could you
Bill.
speak up, please? Thank you.
Anyway, I'll just run down it real quick. Post-nasal drip, sinus discomfort, stuffy feeling, loss of smell, weak voice and hoarse, saliva and mucus, bad metallic taste in the mouth, hearing loss, coughing, shortness of breath, not enough air, heart palpitations, rapid heartbeat, a breathe easier than normal, have cold sensitivity, high blood pressure, aches and pains, stiffness, swelling of joints, arthritis type feels, tight and stiff muscles, aches lower in the neck and lower back, upper and lower extremities, swelling in hands and feet, cramps, moist sweating, night sweats, blurred vision, down there no night vision anymore if I walk out somewhere and it's dark and lost. Double vision, and that kind of goes through it out of this little list. I think I run it to 29 of them. Now, I went back in as a contractor for Washington Construction. They were, clean up there. I have a gravel pit on my place there, and we were shipping gravel out to build a road so they could get in and do the wreck site down. During this period of time, this wreck happened. It had very light drizzle. It was just a very damp type deal. It wasn't raining real hard, it was just wet. The soil situation down in the area that the wreck was in is a light loam, and you put a little water on it, it's just, you're sunk. Now, also, I've heard mention that there was very little chance of this stuff raising. Well, there is this news video that I've seen that actually you can see these clouds raising off that track and going up the wrong side of the mountain down there. Normally they would drift east. These are going back west in a raising. And I've heard tell about the fire. There's also a new video somewhere that shows that fire burning in that area. Now, 9 Mile, I heard that the CNN helicopter that flew in there and dropped part of it over in the 9 Mile. But if those prevailing winds in that area up there, once the chlorine or whatever it was, hits at the Penny Creek, that's just like a wind tunnel. It pushes that stuff right up and over in the 9 Mile. You can watch the storms there every day. When they come down that canyon, they left-hand turn and go to 9 Mile. Okay, now I went back in. Like I said, I was supplying gravel to Washington Construction. I also, at that time, held a hazmat card. First thing I was interested in, is it safe in here? I was told by Washington Construction and whoever was doing the testing around there, oh yes, you're safe as the dickens. Well, the same period of time I was in there, I wasn't completely busy shipping gravel, so I went down to the Toker's place and put in a new septic system for them. I opened the door on their porch to hook up the sewer line underneath before it comes out of their house. And I just about blew you right out of there. We backed out and left it for a day before we ever went back in there. It was just, you couldn't breathe. It would just take your breath right away. And I've also heard reference to this white powder. It looked primarily like a real thin volcanic ash. I saw it come back on the dump trucks that were hauling gravel down there. So, it was prevalent. I don't know what it was, but like I said, it was a grainy dust. And it was heavy. It had to be carried by something, you know, and then condensed back to what it was. It was heavy enough that it wouldn't fly on its own. And they talk about anytime you get into a poison situation, about 90% of the time you'll get a metallic taste in your mouth. That was quite prevalent while I was in there on this recovery deal. And just the other day, I opened up a chunk of the pit there that hadn't been worked on for several years, might not have been touched since the spill. And I had that metallic taste in my mouth right then. So if you want to come check my pit, there may be some buried in there. Like I said, as far as my health goes, it's been a downhill shot ever since. I was actually running a road grader and standing up on an old type machine going up the road. I had the right hand lifting lever in my right hand and the left in the left hand and both feet flat on the floor, and I could have swore to God I was falling out of that machine. I mean, I just totally went off the deep end. At one point in time, I couldn't walk down a 6-foot wide hallway without hitting both walls every 3 feet. And turning the lights out, I'm lost. In fact, if I shut my eyes right now, I'd stand up, I'll wobble. So far as I'm concerned, we were lied to from day one when we went back in there. Like I said, I had the hazmat training, and I knew damn well it shouldn't be in there if it wasn't completely clean. But who are you going to ask? The guy taking the air test, he said it's clean. So I talked to him several times. I don't know what company it was. We could see him going down the road. In fact, when I opened up Toker's house, there was one up in that area, and I asked him if he'd come up and take a reading on that, and he never did come near it. There just wasn't any consideration of what was going on. Another factor, I think, if you went through MRL's roster, and you get those guys working for them that worked in that area, they weren't that well protected either. I've been told a few of them, they're not doing as well as they should be. They'll talk to me, but they won't come in here and talk to you. So the whole thing, as far as I can see, is pretty much they cover it. MRL wanted to protect their rights, so who gets sued, and this is what they've done. Then, the US government and the EPA and everybody else helped them out. That's what all I got to say.
We have a question, Senator Elliott.
Mr. Sandstrom, you mentioned that the white powder looked like volcanic dust.
Mm-hmm.
I presume that you were around in 1980, 81 when Mount St. Helens erupted?
Yeah, well, I was way over in eastern Montana, so what we got over there was really fine.
Okay. So you couldn't compare it with the type of dust that we got in that time from Mount St. Helens? I was just trying to
No, I
figure
have
out.
no comparison with here. Like I said, what it looked to me like was real fine volcanic dust. And at that time, I was on top of Little Rock and building clandestine gold mines.
Was it similar, was the dust similar to in size to what you saw in Dusky?
Yeah, within comparison, yes.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Next statement.
I'm Lee Schutter. I own property right across the river, about half a mile. I have a wrecking yard there, and my son is also the assistant engineer. What Robert said here, symptoms, I also had just about everyone. I've been back to Des Moines, Iowa, to the leading toxicologist in the nation, Dr. Mark Coleman, and there's nothing they can really do for it. But I can go to a dentist and take twice the Novocaine. I just had a sinus infection. The antibiotic I got didn't, I took them as prescribed, and it didn't affect me hardly at all. I can take about maybe 4 hours in the wrecking yard, and still to this day. When they said that it was safe to go into town, I had a business out here at the Y, which, after being shut down for 3 weeks, I lost it all. And but the first day they said it was safe to get in there, we pulled him over, my mechanic and I, and he would not come back the next day. The next day, I brought in 2 young kids. They left at noon. They wouldn't come back. And I worked at Stone Container. I had a top job there, which I haven't worked for a year and a half because of my health problems. And, it's just whatever's been said, especially by Mr. Sandstrom here, I'll agree 100%. Now, a year after this, I pulled a door out of an Escort, and my neighbor who was with me, he says, "You still smell like chlorine?" Well, I work at Stone Container, so I'm kind of used to chlorine smell. And I said, "Yeah, you can." Well, there was all this dust. You probably could still vacuum some of the cars. I've got about 600 cars in my yard. You could probably still find some there. And some of the cars that's never been opened, you could probably still smell the chlorine. At the time, I was at 9 Mile at my home there. But I had 2 little boys in Alberton, and I don't know what the effect it's been on them. My wife thought she had MS, which she went to the doctor for. here, and they said, no, she didn't, you know. But, well, I'm going to just cut it off here. And you can ask me questions if you want.
Thank you. John Zeimet?
Hi, my name's John Zeimet. I live up in 6 Mile, and the morning that the spill happened, I was driving towards Alberton. It got stopped at Tucson, exited by state patrol and turned around, and at that time I could smell and feel chlorine, you know, in my throat, my eyes. I had turned my truck around after talking to the highway patrol for a while, and went back and called my wife to get her out of there. They say the 6 Mile area was not an evacuated area, but we got some up there. We got enough that my wife, she's a severe asthmatic, and within 48 hours she was in the ICU. She was put on morphine drip because of the pain in her lungs from the burning. She was in severe, you know, problem with breathing and stuff, and she said that it was the worst pain she ever went through in her life. It was like her lungs were on fire. This went on for about a week and a half, and because they'd given her so much morphine, they felt that she OD'd a little bit. They had to put her back in ICU, and then had to pull her off the morphine as the pain got worse. This is, you know, pain nobody should have to go through and stuff, but it was, you know, the show that was up there in the 6 Mile area. You know, kids went through a lot of stuff. She was released from the hospital about 2.5 weeks later. Beckmeyer wouldn't even let her go back home. He made her stay in town for a week and a half, and even then he was reluctant to send her back. She went to the eye doctor to get her glasses fixed. At that time, they found out her eyes were severely burned. Now, this is a long ways from Alberton, you know, and to get some burning, to get this irritation to her lungs, this got to a lot of other people out there. She then got checked by the eye doctor, and we were all brought in. One of my sons was found with burning on his eyes. I was found with some burning and some problems with my eyes from running into it that morning. 2 months later, we went down to Denver to National Jewish, where she had been a couple times before. They had a specialist down there that dealt with chemicals and stuff like that, plus chlorine. They tested her. Even at 2 months after the spill, they've still found chlorine burns and problems with her down at National Jewish. You know, my opinion, the EPA along with the railroad are both at fault. This should never ever happen. And the testing should have been out further. As Lucinda said earlier, if you can smell it, you're getting exposed to it. And there's reports that they were, you know, detecting this clear into the airport at the fire station across the street from there. You know, and I don't know, basically, there's a lot of things I'd like to say, but try to think of them right now. You're upset, and, you know, you want to, like I say, you're going to go on and on and on about different things, but there needs to be more testing. There needs to be people like Dr. Kilburn brought in. These people are willing to really dig and research, because there's a lot of hurt people out there. Lucinda has talked to a few people in our area that are scared to death because of the media, the way they handle it, you know, the way people are looked at. I think that a letter should be sent out again, like you did for this, to all the residents, with a hotline for them to call to let them know that they're not, you know, alone. There is some problems, and we need to find out what these problems are. We need to do some testing, which I'm aware of is going to be happening. According to a few people on the dioxins and stuff that cause cancer, one of the things I always wanted to see done was the animals in Alberton. They have fat samples taken so we could see if there's some cancer causing problems with these animals, because like the EPA, when I asked them about it, Weiss and these guys, they said, oh, well, you can't test a human because, you know, don't know what they've been exposed to. You don't know where they've been. Well, Mr. Cow, Mr. Pig, Mr. Horse has not been anywhere but Alberton since the spill happened. And they can't do anything but just sit there and be tested, and then the truth will come out. There was a cancer thing here, I think last week, and one of the ladies that was talking about it said most of the breast cancer and the cancer that are happening these days are from the environment, the things we're doing to people. Well, this spill is something that's done to these people, and I think it needs to be done, mostly because of the unknown, and we need to know the unknown. Thank you.
Yes. I have a question for all five of you. I would like you to tell us if you've had any financial hardships or what those are. And John, we could start with you, if you don't mind.
As far as financial hardships, my wife was disabled when this happened, but she always wanted to go back to work. She was a nurse, and knowing asthma and stuff, you know, she wanted to help people. And her, you know, physical being has gotten worse. I mean, she has gone downhill so bad, it ain't funny. A few things that I didn't mention before is Beckmeyer is one of her doctors, and has seen him all the time. In the last 6 to 7 months, one day he asked her if she was scared of dying. After that, about 2 months later, he asked her if she wanted to have a lung transplant or stents. We never talked about this stuff years before, you know. But no, she can't go back to work. As far as for me, it's getting tougher to go to work. You know, I don't know what's exposed to me. You know, I was there that morning and stuff. I get more joint pain. I get tired all the time. You know, your stamina's gone, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just the unknown.
Do you see the potential of having to take early retirement?
If it gets any worse as it has in the last 5 years, yes. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Schutter, I would just like to make a comment. I'm not going to personally testify today because I get too emotional, and I feel like the brain damage that I've received makes me very teary, and I feel like it's a stroke victim. If you've been familiar with a stroke victim, and they're real tender. And but anyway, back to the financial.
Yes, I haven't worked since May, a year and a half ago. I had about $76,000 a year job, which busyness and the way I felt and everything, I didn't feel that I wanted to make paper out of it. So, it's a very dangerous job. So, I just felt that it wasn't worth it. And another thing I'd like to, I forgot to state is that rail had been turned in 3 times before this spill happened. And now that should have never happened. But Rail Link has got their track supervisors driving up and down the freeway in trucks. Now, my stepdad was a track supervisor. He was up and down the road every day, the railroad, in a motor car. Well, I was born and raised around that. So you can tell if you got a bad rail, or even if you're missing a bolt out of the joint. Back to my stepdad's job, and like I said, I could tell if the bolt was gone when I was like 6 or 7 years old. So, as far as I'm concerned, this should have never happened.
Right, and along that line, to get into the record, Montana Rail Link, there was new rail laying there beside the track. I would like Montana Rail Link to tell us why that rail was laying there if they contend nothing was wrong with the track.
Now, Mr. Schutter, you indicated a moment ago that the rail was turned in 3 times?
Yes, that's
Can you
what my
explain
son-
what that means?
Yes, they have radios on the engines. Like I said, my son's assistant engineer. It had been turned in previous 3 different times.
Been turned in for defects?
Defects, yes. I'm not supposed to say anything. Sorry, that slipped out.
Thank you.
But my son is totally disabled.
Yeah, as far as financial goes, yes, I had an excavating company, and when I got busy, I was really out of work for almost 3 years. Consequently, I sold the whole company just to pay the doctor bills, and then finally wound up private bankruptcy. So, yeah, it hit me pretty hard.
During those 3 years, were you ever at risk of losing your home?
Oh, yes, ma'am. It's some pretty fancy financing there for a while.
Thank you.
Yeah, 2 years without work is hard, and Bob is my dad, and our whole family pitched together so we could save our home.
Yes, we had quite a bit of financial problems since my husband had to quit his job as a notified painter under the doctor's advice. Came home with this breathing problem, his chest hurt so bad. Did some trail maintenance and then went to Washington Schutter to be retrained as a truck driver. So in that interim of not a lot of work, it hit real hard financially for us. So we've had to do a lot of fancy financing, as Bob put it, as well.
Well, there are no further questions from other members of the panel, but before letting you go, closing you out on this panel, I'd like to say for the record you're very brave. You do me honor by sharing in your bravery. And also for the record, you are not alone. Our toll-free number will be placed on the table at the back of the room. Thank you.